What you streaming?
Hey y'all.
Hey everybody.
Welcome to the What You Streamin' podcast. I'm Allie.
This is Katie.
And we are your hosts of this fantastic little podcast called What You Streamin'.
Welcome to What You Streamin', a podcast where we share our recent watches with you. I'm Allie.
And I'm Katie.
In this week's episode, we're talking about The Orange Years, the Nickelodeon Story. The Orange Years is a documentary film that was released in 2020, and it's about the Nickelodeon Network and tells the story of the network's humble origins deep into the SNICK years. And it's directed by Scott Barber and Adam Sweeney. And we are very excited to have both of them joining us on today's episode to talk more about the Orange Years. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks,
it's our
guys.
pleasure.
Yeah,
thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
I think the thing that's really interesting about the Orange Years is I imagine we all kind of have different relationships with Nickelodeon. I myself don't have one at all. I was raised with PBS and CBS, and that was it. And didn't really know anything about Nickelodeon until I knew it existed, but I didn't watch any of it until my early 20s when I started watching my younger niece. And we got into a lot of Dora the Explorer. So that was kind of, I think, my Nickelodeon time frame was kind of later on in their history. But I know Katie really enjoyed the documentary because it was very nostalgic for her, because you grew up with Nickelodeon more so than I did.
Certainly. So that was one of the really fun things. Allie had mentioned that she had gotten a message from someone on y'all's team. I don't remember exactly how it went, but she said, hey, there's this documentary called The Orange Years about Nickelodeon. And they reached out to us, and I was like, well, that's pretty cool. Like, heck yeah, man, I've watched that. And she's like, I've never seen any of that. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, there was no emphasis. Like, she just had, like, no real interest. And because, it just wasn't, it was nothing. It's nothing to her. And I thought that was one of the coolest things about us being able to watch it, not necessarily together. I don't know if we watched any of it together. Just our conversation beforehand, me just talking about the shows that I can remember right off the top of my head being super formative for me, and just the things I remembered about, like the two I think that I really just like, oh my God, let me tell you about Eureka's Castle. Like, I was just so excited to talk about that and David the Gnome. Like, I was just like, they were the best.
So
and she's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
So we joke around a lot about having beef with David the Gnome.
Yeah.
Not the voice actor, the literal tiny man, the 2-inch.
The tiny gnome.
Yeah.
Harasses us.
Tom Willisby, not the Happy Days. Yeah, not Happy Days. Yeah, he's a gem. But the gnome, you want to talk about Napoleon complex, like it's wild. But Nickelodeon, I think in a lot of ways, as you're describing, Katie, is a lot like how Star Wars is for people, right? Is that there are generational tiers. And so I remember going with my niece to see The Force Awakens, and she had no knowledge at all of A New Hope or Empire Strikes Back. So when we walked out, we're talking about her favorite characters, and she's like, I love BB-8, I love Rey, I love Kylo Ren, and I really like that one silver and blue droid that was there for a little bit. Also, he was really cute, and I'm like, R2D2, yeah.
You're like, of course you do.
Yeah, he's kind of a pinnacle character in everything. So I was like, we have to immediately take you to watch these films at home.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's, I think the beauty, and Scott can speak about this too, is that Nickelodeon, the programming and the storytelling is just so remarkable because it hits so many people in different ways. And if you lined up 100 different people and you asked them their favorite ones, you are very likely to get 100 different answers, right? There's, of course, ones that are what I call the Hall of Fame or the Mount Rushmore of Nickelodeon, like with Are You Afraid of the Dark, Doug, Pete and Pete. But Nick Jr., like you were saying, with Eureka's Castle and David the Gnome, and then leading into Dora the Explorer and Face and Blue's Clues. It's like you'd be lucky if you had one of those as your hallmark for your network. But to have 50 plus programs, it's amazing.
The thing that's interesting about it too, to kind of compare it to Star Wars, sometimes the Star Wars community can be somewhat hostile towards what people's favorite movie is. And Katie and Allie, what you guys were saying, everybody has their favorite show. Everybody has different eras or programs that they connected with better. And what Adam and I had noticed is there's really not that hostility. It's not like if someone's like, oh, my favorite show was David the Gnome, and someone else says, my favorite show is Pete and Pete. They're not like, no, that show sucks. You got to think like me, or I'm going to make fun of you and troll you. It really was a positive thing. And what we found is when people start talking about their favorite show, someone might be like, oh, my favorite show is Clarissa. And someone else is like, oh, yeah, I really like Alex Mack. I'm like, oh, yeah, I forgot about that. I like that one too. And it just kind of, even though there are different shows, because media was consumed in a different way back then, where we were all experiencing this at the same time, the same way. Now some kids might watch on their iPad or on their TV or even on a phone whenever. For SNICK, we were all watching that on a TV, probably on our couch, because it was before kind of kids had their own TV in their room. We were probably in the living room on a couch, all watching this Saturday night Saturday night. So there is this kind of mutual love, even though everyone did have their favorite show. There, when you think about just Nickelodeon at the time, there is this connecting factor to all of us that are a certain age, and we just thought that was really cool. That's kind of what made us want to do the documentary in the first place.
Well, I'm glad you did, because it was definitely a trip to just kind of, like you said, you forget that there were certain shows, and so as soon as it started playing the intros, oh my God, I can't believe I forgot about this show. And then my husband would walk in the room and be like, what's going on? It's the Winter Short. And so I had him sitting down, like as soon as he walked in the room, realized what was going on. He's like, oh, I'm watching this. He really enjoyed it. He thought it was a good little film to sit down on. But yeah, like I can remember us having sleepovers with friends on Saturday night. And that was part of the evening, was we were all going to sit down and watch our favorite SNICK shows and just be like, oh, getting all flustered, like what's going on, and just cracking up and staying up late. And it was just a whole experience. So it was really fun to reminisce about that kind of stuff. And then I was telling another friend of ours, like, oh yeah, like we watched this really great documentary, and I was telling her about it, and she's like, I love Nickelodeon, I'm watching it, cool. So as soon as she knew it existed, she was on it. She was like, we're going for it. We are really glad that you guys went for it and did such a great job.
Thank you. That means a lot. That's one of our favorite things, almost even more than getting to make the documentary, is connecting with other people and hearing that, when it's like, this meant a lot to me, because who gets that? That's an amazing feeling. And we really, to your point, we really tried to pack as many shows in there as we could. There's certain shows that get a lot of emphasis, like a show like Double Dare that really changed Nickelodeon, or Clarissa Explains It All. Those shows get their big moment, but we try to, all the little obscure shows, we tried to at least give a little moment so people can have that aha, like, oh, I remember that, even if we can't focus on it, we tried to show it. And I think the film too, we basically start like in the early 80s and end right around at the millennium. So people that were more in the beginning, they might get to learn more about the later shows, like Keenan and Kel, like people that were more like 9, 10, 11 years old, like in the early 80s, that had aged out of Nickelodeon. They can kind of see where it went after they quit watching it. And then vice versa. I think it's really cool to hear from people that were maybe more like 8 or 9 whenever Keenan and Kel and all that was on, to learn about where the slime was. We've heard so many people say, oh, I didn't know that there was a show called You Can't Do That on Television. And that's where the slime came from. So even though we say there's a certain age that really remembers this stuff, it's really kind of more like two ages, like 80s kids and 90s kids. And hopefully they can learn about the other era and get some newfound like respect and love for it.
Yeah. I have a question for Allie.
Oh, yes. Whoa.
So after watching it, is there a show that you would want to watch now, or that you think you would have wanted to watch when you were a kid that you saw kind of exhibited?
I totally would have watched Are You Afraid of the Dark, because I'm a spooky bitch. I love scary things. So I definitely would have been into that. And then probably like the game shows, what was it? The temple?
Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Yeah, like I think I probably would have been really into that because I really enjoy kind of like the challenge type reality shows. So I'm thinking Allie as a child would have enjoyed those as well. But I did want to say, coming into it, like not knowing a lot about Nickelodeon and watching it, I really enjoyed the development and like the research that went into the shows. I thought that was, for a moment I was like, oh, Nickelodeon was really like boots on the ground. Like, we're gonna talk to the kids, we're making it for the kids. Like, let's get into that mindset. And I like really appreciated that. I don't know if shows do that as much anymore, or networks. And so I thought that was really kind of a neat factor to Nickelodeon. And then also the fact that there were so many women involved throughout Nickelodeon, something else I didn't know anything about, but for the time I thought that was also like a really kind of special characteristic of the Nickelodeon network. So I enjoyed all of those kind of like facts and the pieces that went into the development of the shows. I watched it from kind of like that point of view, and again, I didn't really have that whole like nostalgia type feeling when I was watching it, but I enjoyed the pieces that made Nickelodeon. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you. That is one thing that we really focused on a lot. Like when Scott and I would talk, we knew from a storytelling perspective as well as marketing, it's very important to have the talent and the faces that people are familiar with Mark Summers from Double Dare and Keenan Thompson, Kel Mitchell, and they're all amazing. But we knew that the film was going to be as good as the substance that we put behind it. So there had to be a lot of research that we did in it. And it could have very easily have been a who's who and just like a do you remember type documentary, what some people call kind of like info, like a documercial basically, where it's like all due respect to Taylor Swift for her talent and things like that. But you see a lot of these happen right now, especially in music, right? Where it's just like, it's basically an advertisement for an hour and a half. So when we started doing the research and our homework and learning a lot about Geraldine Laybourne and her team, that's whenever I think we found out that we had a story that I mean, if we're interested in it, then we would assume that other people would be interested in it as well. And one thing I loved about Nickelodeon is that, one, they were so far ahead of the game, but also the marginalized communities that they represented and that they worked with, they did them authentically. They worked with them and they showcased them authentically and organically, and it wasn't performative, right? Like it didn't feel as if they were doing it to check off a mark or because there was a focus group or marketing team that was like, hey, so by the way, this movement is very popular, so we probably should put out a video or an advertisement saying how popular, like how important it is to us, and then moving on. Right? Like there were just good people and talented people there, and Geraldine from the top, it trickled down, and she just wanted the best, kindest people to do the work. And I think when you do that, you end up with something that's remarkable. And that was the experiences that we had with every single person that we worked with and got the opportunity to talk with.
We asked Geraldine Laybourne about that because we didn't, before we started doing research, we didn't know that it was primarily female led. It really was. And I think the fact that, to Adam's point, the fact that they didn't prop that up, that's just the way it was. They weren't trying to check off boxes. That's just the way it was. And Geraldine Laybourne said that. She said, I wasn't trying to, I just gave the job to the best person. And one example is a person named Vanessa Coffey, who's in the documentary. She was the person behind the Nicktoons. So obviously that's the proof is in the pudding. She went out and the first one she got were Doug, Rugrats, Ren and Stimpy, who are still, you can go into Hot Topic and Urban Outfitters and all the places the kids are going and still find those shirts 30 something years later. So clearly she didn't give that job to Vanessa because she was a woman. She gave the job because Vanessa Coffey's a beast. You know, she's a powerful person. And to your point too, we love hearing about people who don't have that nostalgia connection because it's people are just judging the film based on the merits of the film. And one thing I hope is that people that watch it and learn about Vanessa Coffey and what she's done for animation, who maybe didn't watch Nickelodeon, can learn about the effects that we're still seeing today that happen because of their hard work. Shows like Steven Universe and even shows like Rick and Morty that are more creator driven. We talk about this in the film, but cartoons literally were commercials. That's not a pejorative. That's not a negative thing. That's really what they were. Someone would come up with a toy and they would go, let's make a cartoon to support this toy. The idea of let's just make a cool cartoon by a crazy artist who has their quirky, weird style and just give them good stories had not been thought of, or at least not been thought of in decades. So the fact that, I think there's so many cool animated shows going on today. And really, I think people that are fans of Cartoon Network and Comedy Central and things like that, Adventure Time, they can see that this is kind of the genesis of that.
If you're like me and you're just getting started with podcasting, it can be scary and overwhelming. That's why Anchor is such a great choice. It's one of the easiest ways to make a podcast, and best of all, it's free. It also has great creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Another great feature of Anchor is that they'll distribute your podcast for you. Your listeners will be able to access your podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many others. You can also make money from your podcast using Anchor, and that's with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place, and it's easy to use. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today.
I definitely thought the way that y'all kind of wove the story through time, but then again with like the individuals that were involved like in the different periods really gave the documentary like a nice flow, and it was easy to follow, and I enjoyed it kind of from like a Nickelodeon outsider's perspective, I guess. And I feel like I learned a ton of information I had no idea like Nickelodeon even did. Like most of the shows that I've heard of, I was like, oh shit, that's Nickelodeon. Didn't know that.
Yeah. And you have some of these also are getting rebooted, right? So the two that you mentioned, Are You Afraid of the Dark? Ben David Grabinski has done a couple of Are You Afraid of the Dark miniseries that are awesome. And then additionally, they're doing an adult reboot of Legends of the Hidden Temple. And it's funny because I was looking at the application that they have, and it's very much going to be clearly like Fear Factor meets Wipeout meets like the original Legends of the Hidden Temple. And some of the questions that they're asking, you're like, nah, no way. Like, because part of it's like, can you swim this far, right? What's the most embarrassing thing that you would do in order to be part of this show? And I mean, whenever Legends of the Hidden Temple, I used to watch it, it was how much knowledge do you have, right?
Yeah.
Are you a relatively active person? Will you not wet your pants whenever a Mayan warrior grabs a hold of you? Like, can you do all three of those? Cool, done. I hope that Kirk Fogg, I assume Kirk Fogg's maybe going to be part of it. I mean, they did a Double Dare reboot also that had Mark Summers and then also had another host. So maybe they'll move it, maybe they'll have Kirk Fogg on it some and then kind of move it forward to a new generation. But I think that I really appreciate what you're saying, Allie, like that it's just really important to be able to tell a story that is going to attract people beyond just seeing images or sparking that nostalgia. Like we go back to Star Wars, and I mean, the reason The Mandalorian is so good is because it has the best of both worlds, right? Mm-hmm. You get the Luke Skywalkers and then some of these like Easter eggs that you're familiar with, but ultimately the story stands on its own. And if it can't do that, then it becomes just a cash grab.
I think that you need to submit, Allie, and be on Legends of the Hidden Temple reboot.
Listen,
he's always trying to convince me to sign up for Wipeout, like always.
Not even Wipeout. I'm like, we could do The Floor is Lava. Like we could do that one. I don't feel like you have to be in like super great shape. I was like, I think we could do it. We could do The Floor is Lava.
Yes. You have our support. We would
awesome. That's it. Katie, we're doing it.
Oh my goodness. I can't handle it. So I do have to say though, I don't know if we watched this one together or not, but there is a documentary about Ren and Stimpy.
We did watch that together. Yeah.
That really deep dives into that. And that creator fella, he's a G. I was watching it and I enjoy seeing that story behind everything too. Like, so it was really great at first. I was really for like what's happening. And then you start getting into some of the CD details and I was like, oh no. And by the end, I just wanted to cleanse my brain of this. Like, I was like, I wish I'd never seen this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it took a dark turn. I'm not gonna lie. When I went into the Nickelodeon one, I kept waiting for that dark turn.
Yeah,
to
we were
come,
waiting on it.
because I was like, something had to bad had to have happened. Like, what's going on? But like, no, it was just like a feel good documentary. It was
That was appreciated.
yeah, it was just so nice.
And that, they didn't do anything super seedy, so you guys couldn't talk about it. So, I mean, it wasn't necessarily all on y'all, but at the same time, I did appreciate the fact that I didn't have to really wish I hadn't seen that day.
Well, that means a lot, because that was something that Adam and I knew from the very beginning. Like, our main goal is to prop these people up that you don't know about, that are in our minds just up there with Fred Rogers, equal to Fred Rogers. These people shaped your childhood, and because they weren't in front of the camera, you don't really know about them. So that was what we always wanted to do. And we said, you know what? If people complain about that this is a feel-good documentary in an era where that's not really the popular trendy thing, that's what we want to do. And we touched base with, there were two other Nickelodeon documentaries going on at the same time as ours. There was a Mark Summers documentary about his life, and we knew about the Ren and Stimpy one. And so we kind of touched base with them, just to say, like, how can we work together and not feel like we're all competing? So we knew kind of from the beginning we weren't going to go deep into Ren and Stimpy, because they were doing that whole doc out of respect for them. And then also, like, none of those guys wanted to be in our documentary. So but the Ren and Stimpy, Happy Joy, those filmmakers, the stuff about John Kricfalusi came out like when they were done with the documentary. So they literally had to shoot it, and they were done, and they had to almost throw like half of it away and start over, because you can't paint somebody as a troubled genius when they're actually not a troubled genius. They're a monster.
And it was also, we were aware. I mean, we became aware of what was going on with him, and we agreed that this is not what that story is. And what is more important also was to focus on all the other amazing, positive and healthy creators and talent that were behind Ren and Stimpy. It's like kind of listening to like Michael Jackson's song, right? Like, you can appreciate Thriller and Off the Wall and what Quincy Jones and a lot of people did, but also recognize, hey, there were some issues, right? Of course, right? When it comes to Michael Jackson. And so, I think Scott said it well. We've heard a couple times from critics, not many, but that have said like, oh, well, where's the conflict? Where's the drama? Where's the stuff about this person and this person? And so ultimately, I think that you have to, the way that a lot of times I think that we measure films is by what they're trying to accomplish, not necessarily like what a critic may ask for or what they're looking for. And so from the very beginning, when you look at our trailer, when you look at our crowdfund, we had a couple goals, which was we wanted to tell the story of Nickelodeon. We wanted to focus on Geraldine Laybourne, and we wanted to have a very positive tone. And so I think we got really lucky that we were able to work with so many people to achieve those goals. And if somebody wants to go back and watch Tiger King or any other TMZ image videos or stuff, there are plenty of places for that, right? Yeah. We think, especially right now, there aren't enough positive and like feel good and informative stories. That's why we love like Some Good News and Upworthy, and we appreciate those types of stories because they matter just as much and they have just as much value.
And really, I mean, it speaks to Geraldine Laybourne's leadership. There really wasn't a lot of bad stuff when she was in charge. Now, when she was not in charge, that's when you get that other stuff. I mean, it shows her leadership. And we really felt that because the Ren and Stimpy doc covered the John Kricfalusi stuff so well, that it would be, and this is our opinion. And we also, Adam and I wanted to defer to people whose opinion mattered more than ours. Without going into who that is, like, we just felt there were people whose opinion mattered more than ours on that issue. And the consensus was it's disrespectful to have this feel-good documentary and then talk about this horrible thing, be like, okay, and up next is, are you afraid of the dark? Wasn't that cool? You know, there's a time and place for it, and our documentary would actually be more disrespectful. So that's kind of what we came for. And to Adam's point, you judge documentaries, but that was why we decided so strongly to go with what we were doing just overall is you don't judge the Avengers. If someone asks if the Avengers is good, you're comparing it to Spider-Man and the X-Men. You judge that differently than if you're judging like a P.T. Anderson or something like that, film. So I think we accomplished what we set out to. So I'm really proud of the film.
I don't know. I left it feeling pretty good. I thought it was a great film. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And I wanted to touch a little bit on your experiences with making the film, because it was your first time directing, right? For both of you?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm assuming Nickelodeon was kind of a large part of your childhood, and that was one reason why you wanted to focus on a documentary on Nickelodeon. Was it kind of that childhood passion, I guess, or nostalgia for Nickelodeon that kind of pushed you into the director's chair for the first time?
I think part of it was not totally, and Adam can go into this more in depth as far as like our history of all that. But I think for us, we just wanted to make a movie. We wanted to make a movie from start to finish without having to rely on a big company, somebody to fund it, like where it's like, we're going to make sure this doesn't go into developmental hell, or we don't get all the money we need, or having a big production company telling us what to do. We said we wanted to make a movie, and we knew we had the skills to make a documentary, and it seemed like something that was kind of affordable. So that was the start of it. Was we said, let's make a film, let's make a documentary. And that's kind of how we started down the road.
Additionally, Scott and I had written some scripts together. We had worked on some mini documentaries for different companies, and that was a really great impetus for it. And we kind of subscribe to the Robert Rodriguez kind of rebel without a crew, which is a mentality, is that it's like the best way and the most easily way to make a film, like the most attainable way to make a film, is to make yourself as indispensable as possible and to learn as many skills as possible, right? So Scott's amazing at editing and storytelling and a number of other things. He has a really great eye for shot composition. We both have written scripts. I've worked in marketing. And so it was like, okay, well, know what you can do and know what you can't do. Right. And then once we get to the point where we realize we can't do certain things, well, then we'll reach out to the people that can get those done. And if we're lucky, we'll make it happen. The background of Nickelodeon for us is that Scott and I have known each other since 4th grade. We both came from broken homes. A quick story is basically the first time that I spent the night over at Scott's house, we were in Odyssey of the Mind, which was like a really fun program where it was like a creative program. We went to state twice, but so yeah, got to give shout outs to Hauser Intermediate. But so the only person ever to give shout out to Hauser at middle school. But so what we did, we decided to spend the night, stay the night over his house. It was fun. We played with action figures and video games. And then the next day, we're like, hey, why don't we hang out and spend the night again? How cool would that be? Scott's like, cool, call your mom up. So I call my mom. I'm like, hey, mom, can I spend the night? Get the answer, hang up the phone, walk in really stoic. And Scott's like, what's up, dude? Can you not go? Can you not stay the night? It's okay. We can hang out next week. I'm like, well, yeah, no, my mom said no. And also my parents are getting divorced and we're moving today. So what we did essentially is we stayed friends by watching Nickelodeon together and calling each other on the phone. And so it played a really pivotal part in our friendship. Also taught us a lot about the importance of storytelling as well, because you can watch any of those shows, whether you're watching Pete and Pete, Are You Afraid of the Dark, Clarissa Explains It All. Like there's so many that are pivotal and are just great examples of storytelling. Dora the Explorer is like the perfect way to tell a story from the beginning to the end, right? In terms of the 3-step story or the 3-act story arc. So we looked at this and we had been throwing around an idea, potentially doing a festival, things like that. We had also had some other ideas. And whenever we were looking at a story for Nickelodeon, for the documentary, we kept going back to this on our whiteboard. And we checked to see if there was if it had been done before. We joked that we did like 5 really fast and furious minutes of Google research and found out that no, there wasn't a story that had been done. And so that was it. We hit the ground running. We did a lot of research. And when we started with our crowdfund, we had no relationships at all with Viacom, with Nickelodeon, with any talent, really. So we were like, basically had a dream and we're like, well, we hope that this works. And it did. And it did. And that's a testament to all the Nickelodeon talent and people that we worked with. It's testament to Scott, Sean Cawthon, who was an amazing director of photography, and, you know, Lee Lesh and Adam F. Goldberg, who does the Goldbergs, and so many other people. It takes a village to get something like this done, especially whenever you don't have a multi-million-dollar budget.
When watching it, I think you can tell that there's a lot, like a genuine like love and enjoyment for Nickelodeon in the making of the documentary. Even the people that talk about Nickelodeon that you got had as part of the documentary, you just get the sense that everyone really enjoyed working there or being involved in some way. And I feel like your passion for it comes through as well. Also, it's just amazing that something that you enjoyed so much as a child, you were able to kind of bring into your adult lives as well. And I think that's kind of a full circle of events with Nickelodeon, if that makes sense.
No, it's well,
it's
I mean,
true.
It's like whenever I talk to my niece, right? She's like, why can I remember song lyrics, but I can't do my algebra? And it's like, well, because you love it, right? Like it's something that you're very passionate about. And so I think that bleeds through. And by and large, what we, you know, I think as individuals and as communities, we end up coming back to are the things that we love. Mm-hmm. And if you love that, then, you know, and also Nickelodeon, what they really reflected and their attitude at the time was very similar to what our attitude was, is that it's like, oh, well, this is like DIY and like punk rock, right? Like this is very against the grain and counter programming from what was happening. And so I think our project in a way is kind of counter programming, and in a way compared to the gotcha journalism and clickbait, which we see everywhere, and misinformation, this in a way is like a punk rock film, which sounds strange, but that's what Nickelodeon was.
With our journey, it started with Adam and I, and then a guy named Sean Cawthon popped on, Bill Parks, Lee Leshin, Lisa Reyes. And it was just like, if you're doing something really cool, that'll come later. Like by the end, the last producer that came on was Adam F. Goldberg, like Adam said, from the Goldbergs. It's like, holy crap, we're producers alongside Adam F. Goldberg. Like that's crazy. But it really was like a snowball. It started with us, and we just kept pushing that snowball, and it grew and grew and grew. And then it was like we were working on it, like, well, we're working on a real film here.
And I think people really appreciate when you are respectful, when you're professional, and also whenever you genuinely want to partner with them and tell their story, and it's not transactional, right? I think that's a big deal. I mean, I remember when we were at Doc NYC and talking to David Vogler, and he was so kind. David Vogler, for people who haven't seen the film yet, he was not only the inventor of the nick.com website, but he created GAC and Floam and so many of the other Nickelodeon products. Like he was head of product creation, and he was so kind. And I remember him talking to us after the film and when we did the Q&A, and he was thanking us for telling the story, right? Because he and so many people put their blood, sweat, and tears into it, and you don't get to know their story generally. We didn't know their story before we started this, and so it's crazy. I mean, like Geraldine Laybourne threw a party for us. Her and her husband threw a party before the premiere, and was inviting a bunch of the talent. So it's easy to forget that, like when you're trying to achieve your goals, I think sometimes you can be so focused as like, oh, the North Star is getting it done, right? Mm-hmm. But the reality is that there are wonderful human beings throughout the journey, and you'll find a way to get it done, right? Provided that you have the right goals, and if your heart is in the right place.
Did you get to say what you wanted to say in that time frame? And do you feel like you have seen the reaction you wanted to see and the emotions you wanted to see out of people? Like that thing that you wanted to share, did that come through in the way you wanted it to?
Well, I would say for me, I got more than I ever could have dreamed of. We're always getting messages on Instagram and Facebook and through our email. Like I never thought someone would go, hey, thank you for making this movie. Like I never thought that I mean, because it's just not something that pops into your brain. Like I thought people would critique it like, hey, the editing was cool. Hey, the shots look cool. Hey, the music was cool, like that kind of stuff. But people not even critiquing, like, I mean, they're just saying like, thank you. what you did meant something to me. Like, that's just, that's awesome. And in terms of, did we get to say everything we want? I mean, geez, we could have made a whole docu-series about this. And it's so funny. I think that people don't, in a way, this is a compliment and it's a slight at the same time. I think people don't understand this was just made by a couple of people. Like, this isn't like people like, well, they should have got Alanis. It's like, yeah, we would have loved to get Alanis Morissette. Like we would have loved to have made it a docuseries. And we tried, no one greenlit it. You know, we did. I'm really proud of what we did, that this is a real indie film, not a smaller production company, like no production company. So did we say everything we could have said? I could say good things about Geraldine Laybourne for a solid year. Vanessa Coffey, Anne Sweeney, all those people. Like Adam said, David Vogler. But I am proud of what we said. And I think that for me personally, Adam can speak to this too, but like, I think that we got our point across, which was to lift these people up and show they had just as much fun making it as we did watching it.
Yeah,
well, we appreciate y'all's effort on that, because it really did. Like, it came through clear as day that this was not just kind of, I don't want to say your normal average documentary, but like you said, it means something to people very specifically. So not all of those documentaries you encounter on Netflix are going to do that.
Well, I think it's a great question that you asked, Katie, and I think that the answer is yes to both notes, right? Yeah, I mean, like, we would love to have done a Last Dance-esque docuseries like the Chicago Bulls and ESPN did. The truth is that there may be room for that down the road, right? Like, but when you're starting out from the outside and you don't have a calling card or a finished product, that's a challenge. It's a big challenge. And so understandably, what's most important probably to Nickelodeon and Viacom is right now is like, well, we need to protect the brand. And so realistically, are you going to take a chance on someone that's like, hey, listen, we've never made films before, right? But we can show you some of these things that we have done. They're going to say no, right? Probably understandably. And so, but yes, I mean, it's absolutely ambitious, right? And I would also say that I agree with Scott that for what we had, like, kind of 3 tiers of what we thought would be good. We had our like minimal, like, these are the people that we need in order to tell this story. Then we had this would be really good, right? Our list. And then we had this would be the greatest possible story that we could tell in terms of talent. And we got the greatest one, the list, and beyond.
Yeah.
So that happened, and we feel incredibly lucky, right? And who gets to like who gets to make a film with their best friend from their childhood, and there were only, I mean, like Scott said, there were 3 people in every single place that we went to when we were filming, right? Like, and that's not counting, there's color grading, there's obviously sound mixing, those types of things come later. But when everybody was working full-time jobs also. We were taking our vacations to go. It was like, all right, cool. Well, here's all our PTO. You ready to go to LA? Awesome, let's do this. So in that respect, it's a miracle. And it was because of the hard work of Scott and Sean and everybody else behind the scenes, which Nickelodeon was a miracle. Right. That should not have happened, but it happened because there were a lot of wonderful and beautiful and really like positive, influential people that came together and really cared about the community and cared about the movement, and they created something that was really special. So I think that our film, and I'm saying this in a long-winded way, I think hopefully our film is reflective of that positive impact and that phenomenon that Nickelodeon created.
Are you guys currently, do you have any projects that you're currently working on? Maybe that Nickelodeon series?
I mean, yeah, I think that right now, like, we've, been doing largely, I guess you would consider like a victory lap. There's a lot of projects and irons in the fire for both of us. And right now, we just have been really fortunate that now film projects and also podcast projects and items are coming back. So that's really the next step now, is that it's like we take a look at that and then build on the stepping stone of a product and a project that we love.
I like to kind of kill two birds with one stone with that one, and one, prop up all the other people that worked on this and also kind of promote their projects. You know, we had a producer named Elisa Reyes who worked on this, and she was on all that. We met her because she's in the movie, and then she became a producer on the film. She's working on the Proud Family now. She's doing the voiceover, one of the voices for the Proud Family. One of our editors, Bradford Thomason, he has a film called Jasper Mall that he directed. That's really a great film. It's kind of about dying mall culture, and it's pretty much all cinema verite. It's really cool. Adam mentioned Sean Cawthon. He was kind of like our third amigo. He was always, a lot of shoots were me, Sean, and Adam. And he's got a film out called Netflix versus the World. That's a really great film. If you've liked The Last Blockbuster, which I think is a really cool film, it's a great companion piece because it kind of goes more into the why Blockbuster went away. Why weren't they able to compete with Netflix? So if you like The Last Blockbuster and like, I wish I knew even more, I like to recommend that film.
Yeah, and I would also say with Lee Leshin really quickly, who was one of our executive producers, look at his list of him and Adam F. Goldberg, the projects that they've been attached to. Ghost Heads, which is about the Ghostbusters community. I mean, like we could go down a list, like everybody that we got to work with. Yeah. It's just insane how gifted they are. And that's how Nickelodeon is too, right? I mean, like Anne Sweeney is now like, she's with Disney. Is that right, Scott?
Yeah, well, now she's with Netflix. She serves.
Oh yeah,
at Netflix.
That's right. Yeah,
she went on to be president of Disney. And Adam brought up Lee, and thank you for reminding me. He's working on a Beetlejuice documentary.
Yeah,
I don't know much about it, but I know that it's coming out soon. So that's
I think it's isn't it called like Letters from the Recently Deceased or something like that? Like it's like, I mean, like, pick one person, like throw a dart at the dartboard of the people that we worked with, and that includes Scott, and you're going to see so many projects. And so, I mean, the future's bright for everybody. If you ever need any recommendations, like for things, just hit us up, because I can't say enough about Scott, and I can't say enough about the rest of the team.
Oh, one more real quick, Allie. I got to do this. Allie, there's an awesome lady who's actually married to Bradford, our editor, who did our opening credits. I got to give a shout out because those opening credits are awesome. And they actually got accepted into South by Southwest for 2020. But then the festival was only virtual. I felt so bad for her. But Allie works for Window Pictures. She does all of their graphic design, but she did amazing. Okay, and I'll stop. I got, especially because your name is Allie, and Allie.
I was like, me?
Yeah,
Allie's
by the way, Allie's also working on this amazing thing called like Creations that you should like. Yeah, done.
Oh yeah.
Well, branding and marketing.
That's very kind of you guys to give a shout out to all those people. We really do appreciate the good vibes and the kindness and the recommendations.
Thank you all again so much for being on the podcast. We really have enjoyed talking with you, and again, absolutely loved the documentary, and can't wait to see what else you put out there.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
And real quick, for people that it's on Hulu, but for people that don't have Hulu, you can watch it on Amazon, Fandango. Like we're working with a great company called Gravitas, and they've got it everywhere. So, and it's not that much to rent it. So it is on Hulu. If you have that, great. If not, that's not it. You can watch it anywhere that pretty much streams, that rents videos digitally. You can find it. And we've had a blast being here. Allie and Katie, thank you so much. This was just awesome.
Thank you so much. If you guys haven't watched The Orange Years yet, get out there and stream it. Bye.
Or else we'll see.
Also, if you are enjoying the podcast, hop on over to Apple, iTunes, and leave us a review. Maybe smash that star button. Give us 5 stars only, No. Leave us a review, like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends, all of that fun social media stuff. We really appreciate it, and we hope that you are watching something good this week. Get out there and get to streaming, folks. Bye.